Hello, everyone. And with 1 week left until the debut of the second season, especially given the backdrop of where and when it's debuting, here is a video. Oh, now that I finally finished my rewatch of it, looking over the first season of the event streaming series Andor and why a I believe it is the best Star Wars spin-off you should be watching. And it initially he it took a bit had to find its audience, but now it is definitely, I can say in good faith, it is one of the best additions to the saga. So let's begin. Given the way the second season is debuting, with each week having 3 episodes containing like one chapter of the story, I actually approached a similar approach to my rewatch, which I think is a nice compromise in between and staggering each episode out week by week and then dropping the whole season at once to binge. And the main story takes place 5 years before the events of New Hope and 15 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith, where Cassian Andor is doing his best to get by, and with the galaxy having been ruled by the Empire, and slowly, but surely, the sparks of rebellion are being lit, and I can definitely say that at the time it debuted, it was already a quite a turbulent time frame, and now, even as someone who does not feel a need to actively mention what's going on outside this channel and all, it's definitely an ideal way to deal with the situation, and and it definitely is consistent with a lot of the works added to the lore over the last 10 years or so. So, at least in the 13, and since Buena Vista and Lucasfilm became one. And I still maintain this, as I said before. I expected to enjoy the show, given my attachment to the franchise and to this character, as well as the espionage aspect. That what I did not expect, nor did anyone else, was just how excellent it was and how intense it was in depicting the Empire's might. I not just in terms of building planet-killing weapons of mass destruction and turning in one of their major enforcers into more machine than man, and but also how it can affect day-to-day life in more indirect ways. This is especially the case in the Narkina 5 storyline. And in case you haven't guessed, as there will be spoilers, so I'd advise as people, if you haven't seen it, to go watch it. Also, as I maintain, it's quite good, so let's continue. So, this is how that storyline is set up. As Cassian is searching for intel on off planets under the alias Keith Girgo, great hate name by the way, even though they establish he technically didn't do anything wrong, the Empire has him incarcerated on the Narkina 5 prison colony, solely because, one, he fits their profile of who they're looking for, and two, and more so, it's just for the sake of fulfilling a quota on a card. It's not the only individual that's having to incarcerate someone just because to fill like a number on a quota, but the point still stands. And a lot of the emotions that the actors felt during this storyline, as well as the preceding one with the heist for information on Aldani, yeah, that part apparently was not fake. Like, where they were deliberately not told about what they're going to be up against since before filming began, which is quite an effective way of getting real performance of someone right there on camera, which is something that the saga has been using effectively for decades now. Oh, and everything from the a uniforms arms to the working conditions to even the hot floor, or is a factor in how, even though the intent is just to have them in there for X amount of shifts of work, or there is still a moment that stood out to me at the time I first watched this, when it debuted in 2022 and still does, where an elderly inmate who had been in there for most of his life, if if he didn't die for the usual fantastic means, be at the end of a blaster or lightsaber blade, it was just the simple ticking clock of time and a stroke that did him in. And another recurring thread is this one that's been recurring throughout the saga in the show as well, that not every a step towards fighting back against the Prussian regime is done with major, large-scale hail explosiveness. Like a fire, air, or inspiration, and all it takes for a rebellion to spread is one little spark. Or I believe Eve Figment would be quite proud of that one, wouldn't he? Of course, the show is visually stunning, and I knew it wasn't going to be cheap with all these effects and sets, and also having locations they went towards Spain. Least of all, having a named actors such as Diego Luna and Stellan Skarsgård in the cast. I mean, as but definitely liking how they've actually still focusing on like a 1977 era playbook for the presentation, like doing much they can practically. Like the droid way that ends up delivering a party message from a pillar of the community in the finale, like being on set effect. That and even what little touches I appreciate where just to show the Empire's influence. I mean, it's been whenever you watch someone like the prequel trilogy, as I have, you notice how there's a bit of vibrant color, day or night, anything from the Senate chambers to the Jedi Temple to even the various dive bars is inhabited by Outlanders. Is full of life and color, while by contrast, the Empire's influence made things much utilitarian. I mean, and and monochromatic. I mean, something that prioritizes function and the purpose of being what it does over looking good and pleasant. Sure, you get some occasional ones like the lots of blue and gold at some of the senators' parties in the living quarters, but for the most part, you've got black, you've got white, you've also got lots of gunmetal as well. Oh, and definitely he is something I had to appreciate. I mean, I am not the most familiar with all the crew who worked on the show, but I can definitely say that their work is quite impressive, and especially based on some of the documents that have been coming out of the UK, since you have to actually disclose legally how much is being spent there if you want to film there. Or I could definitely say you've seen every bit of that money on the screen. Count on that. And Tony Gilroy, who has been quite the established writer for a very long time, and even though not everything he's put out has been his best work, whenever it works, it really works. He as well as his brother Dan directed a few episodes of the show, and even though he intends one of the projects once his work on this season is complete, I definitely think he made a positive impact with what he's done in terms of quality. That's also why I'm eagerly anticipating this season for another reason. When he says it's going to recontextualize how we see Rogue One, I believe him, especially the way the structure of that is going to be taking place over multiple years and it's going to be functionally ending around the time when it begins. I'm going to guess right where like when and Cassian's getting that a bit of information on the Anchor Frame trading post, as well as breaking Erso out of the labor camp in Wobani. He, he also lets slip that as that has been happening, though not as explicitly as how it has been with Marvel, that whenever a new spin-off is part of the saga, it changes genre slightly. He, like with Rogue One being close to a war movie than a space opera, uh, and I'm inclined to agree. I mean, a lot of people actually call that one their favorite of this run of films, and it's definitely up there for me. And I still can agree with the final battle on Scarif and above it being like the hold the line sequence here in Private Ryan in space. Yes. And they've expressed interest specifically in doing a horror story set in the saga. I'm giving you guys an easy prompt here. Vader hunting down Jedi who skipped Order 66, and they had to elude him. Um, Especially if you don't give him any lines. And that's for the obvious fact that James is gone, but we're just keeping the sound of him mechanically breathing and his imposing figure, or could add to that. Basically, imagine if Michael Myers here's or Jason or even the original T-101 and from the 80s when the saga entered the mark, how I'd do it. Even in an age where people are not always sure what they can say or do, who to strike back against their oppressors, there's, I believe, if the stories we tell are an aid to not only deal with the circumstances in front of us, but also provide us a blueprint and to enact actually a world change through the lens of fiction, and albeit more ways than one. And a simple but effective question and given the circumstances, do you die giving them what they want, or do you die trying to take them down? As I've made clear in years past, I know which one I would choose. And some people claim that whether it's anything from a larger or scale conflicts to something as simple as correcting a people who are misinformed is losing battle, I would simply say this. There is no losing battle as long as there's still people on the field left to fight it. I can guarantee you that. And no matter what your status and what your lot is in life, there's also another simple but effective recurring theme, something I always enjoy talking about in any work I encounter, which is intrinsic to not only the title character story, but to all of ours. Everyone has their own rebellion. And with that in mind, I will see you all again next week. I think for as I start my look at the second season of Andor. That'll be all for now. May the force be with you all.